I saw a tiny paw poking out from under a collapsed couch, and it moved. I froze. The place was dead silent, except for the wind creaking through broken windows and the low hum of distant bees. But there was again a small twitch. Earlier that morning, I got a call from Mr. Patterson, an old teacher of mine who now lived alone in the outskirts of a dying village called Hollow Creek. We hadn't spoken in years, but his voice on the phone was tight and unsure. He said some kids had dared each other to break into an abandoned house near the woods, and they claimed they heard a baby crying. You used to work construction, right? Mind checking place out? I can't go up those stairs anymore. By noon, I was standing in front of the house. It was barely holding together. The roof sagged in the middle. Shingles littered the overgrown yard. The front door was open like a gaping mouth. I stepped inside, holding my breath. The air smelled of mildew and rot. Old wallpaper peeled off like snakeskin. Dust clung to everything. The floor creaked with every step, and broken glass sparkled in the weak sunlight. I moved slowly, unsure what I was even looking for. And then I heard it, a faint, high-pitched sound like a whimper. Not a baby, more like mewling. I followed the sound to what must have once been the living room. The floorboard was stained, furniture torn and broken. That's when I saw the couch, half collapsed against the wall, and the paw. I knelt down, heart pounding. Slowly, I lifted one edge of the couch. The smell hit me first, wet fur, urine, and something musky. Then I saw them, 3 tiny creatures huddled together, their eyes wide and glassy. They didn't look quite like kittens, not entirely. Their fur was coarser, darker. Their ears pointed more upright than normal. And their eyes, something about their eyes made me hesitate. One of them hissed. I flinched, but then another one gave a small, broken meow, and that pulled me in. I couldn't just leave them. I gently reached for them, using my jacket as a makeshift blanket. They didn't fight me, just whimpered and curled in tighter. I bundled them up and backed out of the house as fast as I could. The ride back was tense. I kept looking in the rear-view mirror, half expecting something to be following me. The kittens barely moved, except for an occasional chirping sound. Not a meow, something else. At home, I cleared out a cardboard box and lined it with towels. I set them down gently and closed the box partway, just enough to keep them warm but not scared. I took a breath and stood back. What were they doing there? How long had they been trapped? I called the nearest vet, but it was Saturday. Voicemail, of course. So I drove to the pet store instead and grabbed kitten formula bottles and some soft food. The cashier gave me a look. How many you got? 3. Found them in a dump of a house. Better hope they ain't feral. Some of them bite right through gloves. Back at home, I tried feeding them. The smallest one sucked on the bottle like it hadn't eaten in days. The other 2 were slower, more hesitant. One of them tried to crawl off the counter and almost fell before I caught it. They were clumsy, too clumsy, like they weren't used to people or even indoors. I stayed up most of that night, watching them. Around 2 in the morning, the biggest one started to growl, low and guttural like a tiny lion. I was half asleep on the couch, and it made my skin crawl. I leaned over the box and whispered, "What the hell are you, little guy?" The kitten, or whatever it was, just blinked. The room felt colder. Somewhere outside, a twig snapped. Then silence. By morning, the house smelled like warm milk and old towels. I hadn't slept much, just dozed off between bottle feedings and quick Google searches. Every hour, I checked the box, half expecting one of them to vanish or transform into something else entirely. They were sleeping in a heap, twitching occasionally. Their breathing was fast, shallow. I adjusted the small space heater near the box, making sure the towels were still warm. Around 9, I finally got through to a vet clinic 2 towns over. The woman on the phone sounded curious, but skeptical. 3 abandoned kittens in an old house? You sure they're not feral raccoons or something? No, I said, try not to sound offensive. They look like cats. Just weird cats. Bring 'em in. We'll take a look. The drive took about 40 minutes. I lined the back seat with a thick blanket and kept the box steady. They chirped and growled the whole way. One of them clawed at the side of the box with enough strength to make me glance back more than once. The vet, Dr. Shelley, was in her 40s, with gray streaks in her ponytail and sharp eyes. She opened the box, raised an eyebrow, and didn't say anything for a full minute. "Where did you find them again?" "Hollow Creek. Abandoned house. Under a couch." She nodded slowly and reached in, lifting the smallest one with gloved hands. It hissed, twisted, then bit the air. "That's not normal kitten behavior," she muttered. "I figured." She examined their ears, teeth, paws. Then she stepped back and looked at me. "They're not domestic. Not fully. These might be hybrids. Maybe part wildcat. Did you notice the size of their paws? They're going to be big. Hybrids? Like bobcat mixes? Maybe. Or lynx. Hard to say this young." That word hit me like a brick. Lynx. Is that even legal to keep? She hesitated. "No, not really. And not safe either. Once they grow up, if they're what I think they are, they won't belong in a house." I left the clinic feeling cold despite the rising sun. In the truck, I looked at them again. They stared back at me, calm now, their eyes like amber glass. At home, I set up a bigger space for them in the garage. Safer, more controlled. I didn't tell anyone what the vet said. I needed time to think. That night, as I was changing their bedding, the largest one, the same that growled before, lunged at my hand. Its claws raked across my skin, slicing through like paper. "Shit!" I jerked back, blood dripping down my palm. I wrapped it quickly and sat down hard on the step. My heart was racing. What the hell was I doing? Why didn't I call animal control the second I found them? But then I heard a sound, a small thump. I looked up. The middle one, the quietest of three, had climbed onto a crate and was watching me, head tilted. It let out a low, throaty chirp and blinked slowly. Something about it felt familiar. Not human, not tame, but not hostile either. I cleaned the wound, slapped on a bandage, and sat in the garage until almost midnight, just watching them. They didn't meow. They didn't purr. They moved like something older than house cats, like something from a different rhythm. The next morning, I called Dr. Shelley again. If they're lynx, I asked, "What should I do?" She paused. "Hope the mother isn't looking for them." I didn't know it then, but she already was. I spent the next 2 days glued to my laptop, scrolling through articles, wildlife forums, even government websites. The more I looked, the more it sank in. They weren't just wild-looking kittens. Every photo I found of lynx cubs matched what was sleeping in my garage to a terrifying degree. The oversized paws, the tufts on the ears, the deep amber eyes. They were lynx, real lynx, probably just a few weeks old. I called 2 local wildlife rehab centers. One never answered. The other told me bluntly that lynx were protected, and keeping them without a permit was illegal. "Bring them in immediately," the woman said. "They need proper care, and if the mother is nearby, it's dangerous." But when I asked if they tracked the mother or released the cubs back to her, she hesitated. "That depends. Usually we raise and release, but at this age, it's risky." I hung up, unsure what to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt tense, like it was holding its breath. At one point, I stepped out onto the porch with a flashlight. The air was damp, the kind that sticks to your skin. The wind had picked up. I scanned the yard slowly. Then I heard it, a low rustling, not far, just past the shed. I turned the beam toward the noise, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shape tall, lean, with eyes that caught the light. But it vanished before I could be sure. I backed into the house and locked the door. The next morning, I found claw marks on the side of the garage. Faint but fresh. They weren't from the cubs. Too high off the ground. Too wide apart. I reinforced the door with a metal bar and added a second lock. Then I called the sheriff's office. They said they'd make a note, but didn't offer much else. It's spring. Animals are active. Just keep your trash locked up. But I wasn't worried about raccoons. Later that day, I posted anonymously on a wildlife forum, describing the cubs and what had happened. A user named Red Branch replied, "If they were taken too far from the mother, she might still be looking. Lynx are territorial. She's probably within a mile or two. Should I bring them back?" I typed, "Too late now. If she hasn't found them in 24 hours, she won't come back to the site, but she might come looking for whoever took them." That message stuck with me. I reread it at least 10 times. That night, around 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I bolted out of bed, heart hammering. My hand went straight to the flashlight on my nightstand. The hallway was dark. I moved quietly, barefoot, down toward the kitchen. Shards of glass glinted near the back door. The small window had been shattered from the outside. I flicked on the porch light. Nothing. Then I saw it, a muddy print, large and feline, on the floor just inside the door. One print. No blood. No other damage. Just a message. The cubs were restless that night, growling, chirping, pacing the edge of their enclosure. One of them climbed the side and almost made it out. I had to raise the wall with wooden planks and a sheet of mesh. I sat in the garage, bandaged hand throbbing, watching them through tired eyes. I whispered to them like they could understand. "You're not supposed to be here, and neither am I." They blinked slowly. One of them rubbed its head against the corner. It wasn't affection. It was instinct. The lines were blurring fast. They weren't pets. They never had been. But they weren't strangers anymore either. And somewhere out there, in the dark, something bigger was watching. The next morning, I bought a motion sensor camera and mounted it above the garage, pointing toward the backyard. I didn't know what I expected to catch. Maybe a raccoon, maybe nothing. But by then, it didn't feel like paranoia. It felt like preparation. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the cubs growling again. This time, not toward each other. They were focused on the back wall, tense and still. I checked the camera footage as soon as the sun rose. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the timeline. There she was, a fully grown lynx, lean and tall, with powerful shoulders and eyes that glowed in the infrared. She stepped into frame slowly, ears twitching, nose working the air. Her fur looked damp, like she crossed water to get here. She moved straight toward the garage. She stayed for nearly 10 minutes, circling, sniffing. Then she vanished into the woods. I backed away from the monitor and sat on the cold floor. She had come for them. I called the Wildlife Rehab Center again. She came back. I said, "I have video." She was right outside. "We can send someone," they told me, "but if she's active in a residential area, we might have to tranquilize." She didn't do anything wrong. She didn't attack. She just came to look. Still, that's protocol. I hung up. Later that day, my neighbor Walt came over. Big guy, mid-60s, always wore the same battered cap. He walked straight into my yard like he owned it. "Jake," he barked, "what the hell are you keeping in there? My dog won't go near the fence." I saw prints. Big ones. "They're just cubs," I said. "I'm trying to figure it out. You need to call someone. Hunters, animal control, I don't care. This ain't a damn zoo." I already did. They won't help without escalating. And I won't let them shoot her. "Then you're a damn fool." He stormed off. I didn't stop him. That night, the air was heavier. A storm was building. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Around midnight, I went to check on the cubs. I opened the garage slowly. 2 of them stared up at me, eyes wide. The third one was missing. Panic set in instantly. I scanned the walls, the mesh, the gaps. There were scratch marks near one side, low to ground, like something had been digging. I ran outside with a flashlight. Mud, broken twigs, a set of small tracks leading away. And next to them, deeper impressions. Wider paws. She had come back and taken one. I dropped to my knees, listening. Nothing but the wind. The next morning, I drove out past the last houses, where the road turns to gravel. Then I parked and walked into the woods. I didn't know what I was looking for. A nest? A den? A sign? The forest was damp and silent. Pine needles muffled my steps. I moved slow, careful. Then I saw it, a hollow under a tree, hidden behind fallen branches. The ground around it was disturbed, paw prints leading in and out. I crouched low and peered inside. It was empty, but something had been there recently. Fresh fur, a bone, not human, not cub size either. I turned to leave and froze. Behind me, maybe 30 feet away, stood the lynx. Her eyes were locked on mine, her ears twitching. She didn't growl. She didn't move. Neither did I. My breath caught. Then she looked past me, toward the den, then back. I got the message. I backed away slowly, heart hammering, never breaking eye contact. When I finally made it back to the truck, I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes before turning the key. She didn't attack. She was warning me, or thanking me, maybe both. The next few days passed like slow-burning hours. I barely left the house. I kept the remaining 2 cubs in the garage, checking on them every hour, reinforcing the enclosure, setting up more motion lights outside. And still, I knew she would come again. I didn't hear her arrive. No growl, no scratching, just silence. It was the next morning, early, maybe 5, when I opened the garage and saw the empty corner. Only 1 cub remained. I dropped the wrench in my hand. It clanged against the concrete floor. I didn't even flinch. No broken mesh. No signs of violence. Just a hole barely big enough for a cub to squeeze through. She had come back and taken 1 more. The last one, the smallest, was crouched in the corner, shaking. I sat with him for a long time, hand resting on the edge of the box. He didn't purr. He didn't blink. He just stared. That evening, as the sky turned the color of burnt orange, I loaded him into a crate. I didn't bring food or water, just a towel and a flashlight. We drove out to the edge of the forest again, past the houses, past the point where the road turns to gravel. I parked, turned off the headlights, and listened. Crickets, wind, nothing more. I carried the crate out into the woods, moving slow. I didn't go as far as the den, just a wide clearing where wildflowers had begun to bloom. I set the crate down in the grass. "I don't know if she'll come," I said out loud, "but I think you belong out here." He didn't move. He just blinked. I opened the door. He didn't run, didn't even stand, just stepped out slowly, 1 paw at a time, then sat. I stepped back and waited. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. Then I heard it, a rustle, soft, intentional. I didn't turn around. The cub did. He chirped once, then trotted into the brush. Gone. I stood there until full dark, until the stars came out. The next morning, the garage was too quiet. I left the door open anyway. A week went by. I walked in the woods every day. No signs, no prints, no sound. I didn't see her again, but I felt her. A year later, on a warm May morning, I went back to that same clearing. I don't know why, just a pull in my chest I couldn't ignore. The flowers were blooming again, the grass taller, and on one tree, a thick pine near the edge, deep fresh claw marks. Below them, small prints. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hand on the bark, breathing. They weren't mine to keep, but for a little while, they had been mine to protect.